Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this video tutorial, which is looking at the AQA Comedy Anthology for a question that has come up in previous years. This video is for students who are studying both AS English Literature as well as the A-level English Literature, because this text might feature in both years of your course. So the main aim of this video is to give you an example paragraph using the poem Sunny Prestatyn as a way to show you what effective essay writing might look like in order to do well on this course. Before I start writing the paragraph in this video, I just remind you, in terms of good exam technique for English, is to make sure you answer the question that's set, and you can show that by repeating the key word of the task or synonyms for that word throughout your answer. So the question that I'm looking at in this video is explore the significance of deception, and deception is going to be the word or synonyms for deception that you should repeat consistently throughout your answer to show that you are on track. So the central argument of my paragraph would be that Larkin deceives the reader into believing that Prestatyn is utopian and perfect and a kind of a irreverent atmosphere that you might expect from a seaside resort. And I'm looking mainly at the juxtaposition between the tone for the title and the first stanza versus the tone for the second and or third stanza. So that is my argument, and that is essentially what my paragraph about this poem would be focused on saying. So as with other videos that I have created on my channel, the ones where I type as you watch have proved popular. So that's what I am going to be doing here. So apologies if I have to go back and change some of the spelling and some of the grammar, but that's of course why we proofread. So with the poetry essay, whether it's for AS or A-level, there is no requirement to write an introduction, because it can be beneficial to go straight into your first paragraph about your first text. And that would show a degree of confidence and a degree of precision in your writing, because it means you're getting straight to the nub of the issue, which is what poems could we use to talk about deception? And that's essentially what the examiner has asked us to talk about. So in order to immediately show the examiner that I am on task, I'm going to repeat that word. And that helps me as well, because it means I make sure that everything I say is to do with this particular topic. So deception is also apparent, or deception is apparent if you're going to write this as your first paragraph, when considering the utopian and idealistic depiction of Prestatyn in Larkin's poem. So we would call that a topic sentence, and in English, a topic sentence is when you signpost to the reader what the following paragraph is going to be about. So based on that topic sentence, it's obvious I'm writing about deception, and it's obvious I'm writing about Larkin's poem, Sunny Prestatyn. The poem acts as a dark satire. So in this sentence, I'm trying to just expand a little bit on the poem itself, and how it maybe might link to the comedy genre more generally. So the poem acts as a dark satire, reminding readers that comedy can be controversial and shocking, evidenced through the treatment of the holiday poster, which is gradually vandalized. Okay, so using the phrase dark satire you're making connections there to the comedy genre, but you're also showing your knowledge of comedy, that comedy is multifaceted, which means that comedy isn't just one thing. Comedy can be a range of things. And this poem shows that comedy can be shocking and controversial. In fact, some students might even question why this has been included on a comedy course in the first place. From its title, readers are deceived into believing that the poem has positive or jubilant connotations because of the adjective sunny. So, relatively simple. Sunny is often positive. A mood which may be expected due to the focus on a seaside resort. So you would expect things to do with the seaside to be pretty happy, because they usually are. It's a place where a lot of people like to be. It's also a place of escapism, of course. The first stanza is equally deceptive, with a tropical setting described, with palms and a hunk of coast. So I'm being very precise with my quotes, very short quotes, which is great. It means I'm being perceptive and assured in what I'm talking about. Making the resort seem exotic and pleasant. So I've used that word deceptive, that links to the title. We have here what appears to be almost a Mediterranean or Caribbean setting, or certainly a warm, welcoming place with these kind of symbols, which might be different to the way in which Prestatyn actually is. In the first stanza, the girl on the poster wears white satin, suggesting a degree of innocence and purity as she kneels on the sand. She is smiling and welcomes viewers to come to sunny Prestatyn. I don't think it's capitalized, but it doesn't matter really. Come to sunny Prestatyn as if it's a destination that is worth visiting because of its beauty. However, the second and third stanzas conflict with this utopian representation, with phrases such as "she was slapped up one day in March" and "stab well through," creating violent connotations that are the antithesis, the opposite, of the irreverent mood. I always have difficulty spelling this correctly. Reverent, there we go, mood of the resort. Okay, I'm going to try and keep this paragraph going. I'm going to try and keep developing this for a few more sentences. Larkin's unapologetic colloquialisms. So I'm showing here knowledge of methods, authorial methods. Larkin's unapologetic colloquialisms, such as huge tits and fissured crotch and the crude, snaggle-toothed and boss-eyed, epithets may create humour, but can also be seen as disturbing and addresses the reality that human behaviour is far too flawed to let beauty pervade. As a result, the concluding line, "She was too good for this, for this life," and her gradual sexualized violation points to a more dystopian reality at odds with the deceptive title and opening stanza. Use that word deceptive again. Rendering the advertising world as being hollow and artificial. In other words, advertising and marketing is based on illusion a lot of the time. Things always look better than they actually are. And it's that juxtaposition that I'm kind of trying to give across here. Final sentence, thus, the poem reinforces how the true nature of ordinary human behaviour and foolishness. Oh, let me just put it up a little bit. Okay, and foolishness can be covered, can be concealed by deceptive marketing. Okay, so that is my paragraph. So going back to my central argument is that I am using this poem because I believe that Larkin has deceived us all through the title and the first stanza by making this resort seem nicer than it actually is. And that sets us up for quite a noticeable contrast in mood and tone when we get to the beginning of the second stanza, where we start to get crude language, which is also part of the comedic tradition as well. So this is what I ended up with. So deception is apparent when considering the utopian and idealistic depiction of Prestatyn in Larkin's poem. The poem acts as a dark satire, reminding readers that comedy can be controversial and shocking, evidenced through the treatment of the holiday poster, which is gradually vandalised. From its title, readers are deceived into believing that the poem has positive or jubilant connotations because of the adjective sunny, a mood which may be expected due to the focus on a seaside resort. The first stanza is equally deceptive, with a tropical setting described with palms and a hunk of coast, making the resort seem exotic and pleasant. The girl on the poster wears white satin, suggesting a degree of innocence and purity as she kneels on the sand. She is smiling and welcomes viewers to come to sunny Prestatyn as if it's a destination that is worth visiting because of its beauty. However, the second and third stanzas conflict with this utopian representation, with phrases such as "she was slapped up one day in March" and "stabbed well through," creating violent connotations that are the antithesis of the irreverent mood of the resort. Larkin's unapologetic colloquialisms, such as huge tits and fissured crotch, and the crude, snaggle-toothed and boss-eyed epithets may create humour, but can also be seen as disturbing and addresses the reality that human behaviour is far too flawed to let beauty pervade. As a result, the concluding line, "She was too good for this life," and her gradual sexualized violation points to a more dystopian reality at odds with the deceptive title and opening stanza, rendering the advertising world as being hollow and artificial. Thus, the poem reinforces how the true nature of ordinary human behavior and foolishness can be concealed by deceptive marketing. Okay, so in other words, it's people that prevent us maybe from achieving a sense of idealism because of the behaviour that we decide to exhibit. And in this poem, it's of course the vandalism of that poster over 2 weeks. Okay, so Obviously, with English, there's no one way to write a paragraph. Students often ask me, what does a kind of a confident answer look like? This would be something that I would maybe put up on the board to show them, or print off to let them analyze. Like I said earlier, the most important thing is to make sure that you keep using the keyword throughout. So deception, deceptive here would show that you're on task. Okay, so hopefully that was useful. And thank you, and good luck for the rest of your studies. Thank you.